On this episode of Doing the Most, happy Halloween, we're gonna do something a little scary. I have had kind of uncountable numbers of people reach out and ask if I would ever even consider attempting the Mountain Dew wine that has been trending on social media. And my answer has largely been, You know, making mead or wine from soda is not a new phenomenon. When I first started homebrewing in 2010, lots of people were doing it. And I remember making a wine out of Sundrop citrus soda. If anyone's familiar with that, drop a comment and let me know. One of my favorite citrus sodas, and I love the holiday edition. Now, the wine I made from it didn't turn out well. And whenever I see somebody say they made a wine from a soda online, I generally am skeptical of whether or not it turned out well. But, you know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And if it tastes good to you, that's all that matters. The fun in the homebrewing hobby is doing unique stuff that brings you joy. You know, I see a lot online folks saying that the hardcore mead makers who pour their money and time into costly meads in pursuit of the best, most luxurious mead, somehow those folks are, I guess, put off by the experimentation that happens in the, I guess what we would call the hoocher community. Shout out to r/prisonhooch. I am a subscriber on r/prisonhooch. And y'all are some of the more creative people I see on the internet. So did you know that for just $100, you can buy basically like a year's supply worth of Mountain Dew syrup? So I bit the bullet, and it ain't cheap, but in the spirit of Halloween, we're gonna open this up. We're gonna mix up a Mountain Dew brew and see if we can get anywhere near drinkable with it. We're gonna do a few things to help ourselves out here. We are not gonna be buffering the pH. I've seen a lot of folks trying that online. I don't like salty wine or mead, so I'm not gonna be buffering the pH with anything like baking soda or even calcium carbonate. Not gonna go that route either. What we're gonna do is pitch an kind of insane amount of yeast, 25 grams of rehydrated Uvafirm 43. We're gonna put that in with GoFirm, and we are going to be hitting this with both diammonium phosphate as a nutrient and Fermade, and we're gonna front load all those nutrients. My goal is to have this finish fermenting in under a week. I'm not gonna do anything about preservatives, not super worried about that. We'll see what happens. It says ship and store this side up, so I think we've already failed there. There it is. It's gonna be a mistake to take it out of this box. Okay, we've acquired syrup. According to the manufacturer's instructions, we're supposed to do a 1:5 ratio of syrup to water. And we already have our orange blossom honey in here. And shout out to my friend Carlos from Texas Longhouse Mead. He got me this orange blossom honey, which should be a good complement for Mountain Dew syrup. So we need about 4/5 of a gallon of syrup to go into here, and then we'll fill it up the rest of the way with water. So the first thing I'm gonna do is get our yeast rehydrating. Here I have some sterile water and our massive amount of yeast and some GoFirm. Cool. So that needs to rehydrate for 15 to 20 minutes. We'll set that off to the side so the yeast can plump up with plenty of vitamins and minerals as they rehydrate. How hard could this be? Nailed it. All right, this carboy is sanitized, so we're just gonna try and pour directly into here and get it up to about that range. Ooh. All right, the juice is in. Now I'm going to put our Fermade O and our diammonium phosphate both in. Now let's get it stirred up. Now we just need some water. Starting gravity is 1.098. 1.098. That's going to be a big boy. The good news is we're not going to be bottle conditioning this. We're going to be putting this in a keg and sparkling it because that's how Mountain Dew is made to be drank. So I'm going to hit this with our yeast. And we'll put a blow-off tube on here and see just how long this takes to ferment. So this had about a 24-hour lag phase where it took a while for the yeast to get going. But then at the 24-hour mark, it kind of took off and started creating a bunch of krausen at the top and was a pretty active ferment. After about 3 days, I decided to add a little bit of diammonium phosphate just to give the yeast some candy to eat because I was a little worried that they might be slowing down. Some in the community like to refer to meads made out of soda or candy or whatever as cursed meads. And I don't believe that to be the case. However, I ran into one little problem, a problem I reported on my channel years ago. My carboy cracked. One afternoon I was kind of ambling about in the back area of my house where the studio is, and I could hear dripping. And when I went to check on it, there was a circular crack around the bottom of the carboy. So I had to, in a rush, transfer it over to a brewing bucket and get it out of that glass carboy since it was about to explode and send Mountain Dew raining all over my studio. Fortunately, I got it over to a bucket and it finished dry right at 1.000 on the hydrometer. Now, I really wanted this to be more problematic. I wanted to use it as a lesson to talk about pH and preservatives and all that, but I didn't really have any problems. I rehydrated my yeast, I used a good nutrition protocol, and it just fermented without having to do anything really unusual. I think if I was going to do anything differently the next time, I would, when rehydrating my yeast, I would start adding a little bit of the Mountain Dew must to it over the course of 12 hours to a day, just to kind of better acclimate the yeast to that weird Mountain Dew environment. But this didn't need that, and it fermented out in under 2 weeks, so it really wasn't that big of a deal, and here we are. Once it was done, I transferred it back to a carboy, and I added some stabilizers so I could back sweeten it using more Mountain Dew syrup. And so I weighed out about 13 ounces of Mountain Dew syrup, thinking that was going to be on the low end of what I would need to back sweeten. So I put that into the keg, and then I racked into the keg from the carboy, just using a siphon. And then it was time for a quick taste test. That needs to be sweeter. Way sweeter. I think it still needs to be sweeter. At this point, I figured I probably had it good enough, so I went ahead and sealed up the keg, and I put it into my keezer and put it on carbon dioxide. I purged all the oxygen out of the top of that keg, and then I set it to carbonate. And after 3 days, it was carbonated and ready to taste. And so, here we are for an honest taste test. This is a pretty high ABV sparkling mead made with Mountain Dew as a base, and it's back sweetened with more Mountain Dew syrup, so it should be as much doing the do as we could possibly do in something like this. And you may have noticed I have just a little bit of a cold, but we're gonna taste test this anyhow. There we are. Sparkling Mountain Dew Hydromel. It smells exactly how you would presume fermented Mountain Dew would smell. Citrus and fermentation funk. I mean, it smells like stale Mountain Dew, and I'm not really a Mountain Dew guy, so it's the best descriptor I've got. All right. That sucks.
Homemade brews and various how-tos, everything from mead to roast. Bake creation, fermentation, inebriation, doing the most.